The latest IMF Global Financial Stability Report says the world economy is broadening, the markets are booming, and everything looks calm and good. But under the surface lies what is described as vulnerabilities to the growth that we've seen in recent years.
Despite these favorable conditions, the recovery is not yet complete. Monetary accommodation remains necessary to support activity and boost inflation. Markets expect a prolonged period of accommodation before policies will be fully normalized after years of unconventional support following the crisis. This environment is breeding complacency. Complacency is spawning financial excesses and is allowing vulnerabilities to build on several fronts.
Now, from the developed economies to emerging markets in developing countries, there are issues to be seriously addressed. For example, in sub-Saharan Africa, the rise in sovereign debt and the yield being pursued by investors around the world is a major concern.
The main risk that we see is that countries continue to build up their debt because it's cheap. They can roll over existing debt and they can take on further debt. But that might generate financial stability problems in the future, and it might generate debt sustainability problems in the future. So I don't want to talk about specific countries in North Africa, but we do present a scenario in the report where this kind of buoyant financial conditions continue to exist for another 2 years, and where then an adverse shock hits, and some countries are hit particularly hard by these adverse developments because of the buildup of leverage that then makes them vulnerable to adverse developments in global financial conditions.
The state of the global financial system, the debt market, credit market, the banking system, and the entire financial architecture of the world play a very important part of discussions here at the World Bank IMF annual meetings in Washington. Bosun Omofaye reporting for Channels Television News.
And back here in Nigeria, access to capital for the real sector took center stage on the day 2 of the 23rd Nigeria Economic Summit. A plenary which featured some bank executives and business startups examined the issues of lending to small businesses and the way forward.
I think instead of government providing liquidity for them, it's better to actually provide credit guarantee. Because credit guarantee is provided to small business associations, even in the United States, that allows banks to say, okay, I'm going to lend because I'm now taking a government risk, and I'm not going to provide lending to this. And it also makes it easier for other people to provide capital. If you look at our country today, our capital market, again, is very small. As a percentage of GDP, it's not up to 10%. The capital market cap, even in South Africa, is 3 times. Even in Kenya, it's much larger as a percentage of GDP. So capital market as a place to actually source money is not there. And that is why, if you look at the assets available, asset classes available to us as somebody that wants to save is you put some money in the stock market, you don't like it, you put it in T-bills, and then you start chasing housing. And that is why the valuation of a housing is actually very high, because that's the only place people can save. So there is some money that can flow to you. Our capital market needs to be able to make that access easy. And we also need to have a small business associations so that things like how do you prepare your feasibility studies, how do we make sure that the governance process works properly, government can provide that to you, institutions within government can provide that to you to create conditions for success. And once the condition for success has been created, you'll be able to see a lot of capital flow.
What is interesting about that, I'm very optimistic about that space, in the sense that we're seeing a lot more really talented young managers, potential GPs as you call them, coming up and getting funded. So I'm aware that, right now in the pipeline, there's probably about a number of people looking to raise in the region of about $1 billion, in various sort of like private equity funds. And these are really, really smart, talented Nigerians. So I'm super optimistic. And also just listening to the traditional providers of funding or investment into that space, the general outlook for that is really quite optimistic. So that seems to be doing quite well. The other side of it, however, this is where I then put the burden on the investors now. The other side of it is actually developing that capacity to properly evaluate and to properly develop investable opportunities. Remember when I was talking earlier on, I put the onus on the entrepreneurs and the business owners or the promoters to ensure that they are presenting investable opportunities. It is not a one-sided thing. I think this is where I will then take my own community to task in a very big way. That is the investor community, both the banks and the non-bank financial institutions. I think very often we're doing a very poor job of actually creating investable opportunities, where we're waiting for well-baked investments. We bring the same criteria that we see in the Western world. We want to see 5 years of positive cash flow. We want to see a management team in place. We don't want any environmental liabilities and so on and so forth. With all due respect, in Africa, you'll be smoking something very nasty if you are waiting for all of those things to be in place. It's not going to happen, right? What we then need to do, as I said, as an investor, as managers of this particular asset class, is to invest time and resources in developing the capabilities to develop those opportunities in a couple of weeks. I distinctly remember working on this deal for 3 years. We just closed the deal around about April. It's actually, sort of our first deal in that space. What did we have to do? We had to manage everything from, this is us investors. We could just show up and say, we will not put money in this thing except blah, 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 blah. But we realized that, look, this is a potentially valuable opportunity. Okay, this is good for the country, and it will make us money. Let's face it, and we'll be able to achieve superior returns. So, what are the sort of things that we had to work on? And this is something I think that should serve as a bit of a case study for us going forward. We had to deal with regulatory issues. This was this was a company that had not been very regulatory, that had not been very compliant in terms of regulation and so on and so forth. We had to work on cleaning up sort of like the whole regulatory compliance aspect of that business. We had to work, obviously, in line with that, we had to work on the governance side. We had to work on this thing I talked about, this technical partnership. This was a business that we felt, it had great potential, but did not have the right sort of capabilities. We had to work on finding a technical partner, a European technical partner, bringing them on board, and we had to form a relationship with them and solidify that relationship, and then come up with a plan around this opportunity. We had to work on the funding, the working capital requirements for the business going forward. All the kind of things that you normally take a look at the deal and like, forget it, we cannot invest in this. Now, this is something that I think, my friends in the banking sector are also just as guilty of this. You have a checklist and you think you can just tick through the checklist. Well, you just keep waiting or just park your money in T-bills for the foreseeable future. So the point being, the onus also lies on the investor community to spend a lot of time, sort of like cleaning up the more promising opportunities, see them for what they are, and invest the time to actually get them to that stage. Of course, it comes at a price, but the returns are absolutely worth it, and that's what we're looking forward to.
I think part of the problem we also have on the private equity side, if you look at the percentage of funding from outside Nigeria itself, most of them comes out, a lot of funding of the private equity firms themselves. Where do you get your funding from? So a lot of things we need to set up. How do we also raise funding from Nigeria? If you look at the experience in Kenya, for example, most of the private equity, local private equity firms raise the funding locally. So you understand the terrain, you understand the business. Some of these requirements you're talking about in terms of funding, minority, migrant groups. Secondly, you also have a lot of people come together as associations to raise funds locally. So I think on the private equity side, how do we increase the percentage of funding, raising funds locally to be able to fund local enterprises might be a major thing you need to do to them. For DBN, the takeoff grant funding, like you said, is $1.3 billion, over $1 billion over a period of time. But in the long term, we'll also be able to raise money through issuance of bonds, also working with some of our development partners, also to also reach some other soft funds across. But the business model is ensure that at the medium to long term, we're able to have that track record to be able to also raise funds locally to be able to continue to finance our business expansion.
Every entrepreneur, before going for investment, needs to, have a clear-cut idea of not only, the advancement of the business in terms of, making profit for themselves, but technically sounding, right to the investor. So these are tiny things that we might not consider, to be the thing. If your idea, for instance, if you're solving hunger, then yeah, everybody should invest, right? But that's not the case. You need to have a solid business case. Your finance has to be right. Your business plan has to be, sound. And a lot of entrepreneurs run into the, problem of not complying to those things. And clearly, without that, you cannot move forward. So the energy is important, but also it's important to get things right from the start on.
Would you think it's right to consult experts at that takeoff level? Because you might have ideas, and you don't know when the opportunity will come. Because some people need to enlighten you, put you through to watch out for this and that, and what step to take from time of developing those ideas.
So in my experience, the very first business plan I ever got written, I got a lot of help. No one can do it alone. So you just have to reach out to the right people. I was opportune to go to the British Library and find a whole business clinic, which a few of you have mentioned. There's need for capacity development. So perhaps if the banks are tired of seeing entrepreneurs who come with weak presentations, weak business plans, they probably need to invest in educating entrepreneurs on how to get these things. And there's a myriad of available free content on this beautiful thing called the internet that entrepreneurs could find and could build from.